Hi everyone, welcome back to another video in Java programming series in 2025, and in today's video we'll be talking about function overloading. In our last video we talked about function, how to create, how to call them, and how to also store and retrieve the return value and so on. Hopefully you had a clear understanding, and in today's video we'll be going to utilize that concept and move one step further. So there are certain scenarios where we will be using the same function name for different purposes with slight modification. So it is basically, creating different methods or functions that takes either different number of arguments or different types of arguments, right? And I will show you how to create that and call those methods. All right. So let me first create a file, and then I'm going to be naming it as function and then overload, or just overload, and then just call it demo. Right, I have created a Java class. That's fine. You can create also compact file. That's fine, either works if you have Java 25. And what I'm gonna do is basically, function overloading is, having same name of the function, right? The function name will remain same, and then number of arguments or the type of the or the order of the arguments will be different, so that the compiler can distinguish as if they were different function, right? Even though they have the same name. All right. So what can I do is, I write a function. So for example, we have multiple ways of logging in, right? So we can log in with phone number and OTP, or username and password. Sometimes some application provide email and password, and they have different username, right? So on. So what can I do is I can create a function called login. So what I can do is public and then void. So since I'm just printing information here, I'm not going to be returning anything, right? But you can say, well, if the login is successful, return true, and then use that in somewhere. All right. So for now, I'm just going to keep it void. And so log in. Let's say I'm going to be logging, or user is going to be logged in as a user using email and password, and the string email and then string password. All right, and then yes out, logging login with user email and password, right? All right, that's the information. So but of course when we write a real application, so we'll write logic here. All right, and let's say we have a login feature also with phone number and OTP, right? So what I can do is public void, again login. Look at the name, because till today we have been writing function name with um, different names, right? But now I'm overloading it. So that means overloading. I'm having same method name or same function name, so to say. And then, so what I'm going to do is phone number. So what is the type of the phone number? So, well, I can make a string as a phone number. It's just about, how you store. So when you store in database, you can have like long int or something, or even text or a string, right? So string phone, and then of course with phone we will be using OTP, let's say. So OTP, it's going to be OTP, like a 6-digit OTP. So login with phone number. All right, so look at this, because here these are essentially two different functions, right? Because this login has two parameters, so they have the exact same number of parameters. But if you pay close attention to the types of the argument, for example, here first is string, and the here first is string. But let's move forward, and if we go here, it's the string password, and then here it is integer. So this way the compiler can distinguish that, well, these two are essentially different functions, right? And based on the argument passed, the compiler will distinguish. All right, so let's create a main method. So I'm going to be creating a main method, and so this main method, inside this main method, I'm going to be calling them. So I'm going to be calling login, and then as an email, I'm going to be passing abc.gmail.com, abc@gmail.com, and password is demo. All right. So here the problem is I haven't covered that concept, but since we are in static context, that means we are inside the static main method. We cannot access non-static. So we'll be talking about static keywords soon. So for now, just write static. Okay, static here. So since otherwise the compiler else it us and says, well, non-static method cannot be referenced from a static context, right? So it has to be static. All right. And if I run it, this will be printed. So the first will be printed, login with email and password round. Now compiler can understand. So if you do control click, you can see where the control is going because it is different. But if you do again the same thing, login, let's say phone number. So phone number is I'm just going to provide 1234. This is not valid, but and as an OTP, so what I can do is 2334343, right? So look at this. Again, the same problem. If I change it to static, we will talk about this static soon. Don't worry for now. And if I do login now, this is different, right? So this is taking us to the last function, right? So because we are passing, the first one is going to be a string phone, that's fine, and the second one is OTP, right? And then I can say just another method, public static, and then void and login is string, let's say OAuth ID. So for example, if you are logging with Google or Facebook or GitHub or whatever it is, you can have even the same single argument, and then you can also call this login, and then just for example, OAuth ID is that's all. Okay, and we don't have any problem. Oh, login. All right. So if I call all of them at once, they will print three different messages, right? So this is, but there are certain rules. For example, you cannot have same type. For example, if I convert this OTP to a string, this is not going to work. This is because the compiler cannot distinguish which login to call, right? Because it has the same order, right? It's the same order. For example, let's say it is integer and you create, now it's the error is gone. And even if you do, for example, integer and string, it works, right? Because these now have different orders, even though it's like integer and a string, but their order is different. So order of course matters, right? The program is case sensitive, order sensitive. So in this case order matters, right? And similarly, I wanted to show, for example, if we have the same type of, let's say OAuth ID, for example, Google and then OAuth ID. And if I write Google OAuth and another OAuth, let's say, and Google OAuth, and then let's say Facebook OAuth, right? Facebook. And if I do use like a different return type, for example, here instead of void, I use boolean, even though it has different return type, right? So let me write one more and return true just to make compiler happy. So now look at this. Even though we have boolean type and here void, this is not going to work. So this is very important to keep in mind, that a return type does not distinguish or doesn't help in method overloading, since we have this the same signature of the method, right? This is not counted, since at runtime we can ignore the value of a return type. So this is a design principle. You cannot have method overload. So we just different return type, right? That's key difference. You know, uh, for method overloading. You have to keep that in mind, right? That's very important. It's also a design choice, right? Because that doesn't make sense to have different return type and it still be overload the same method with same argument, right? Because the argument is something that will be passing. The compiler cannot distinguish based on the return type, so that's very important. Otherwise, it's just like having same name and different types of argument and different number of arguments or different order. That's the basic idea about method overloading, right? So when you are dealing with some situation, you are passing third argument and will be checking. So in those scenarios, so other scenarios could be like calculating the area of, let's say, certain shapes. For example, to calculate area of a rectangle you need length and breadth, but for circle you just need radius, right? So you can have same method called calculate area and then pass sometimes radius and sometimes two other arguments, and depending on other sets you can just overload that. That's really important concept in programming, and when you start working you will definitely work on these concepts. So this was the basic idea about method overloading and particular to Java, and this concept is also going to be applicable to many other programming languages. Maybe they have different syntax, but the idea is same. And if you have any confusion, please let me know. I will try to answer. Otherwise, give some practice, and I'll see you in the next one. Thanks for watching.